You think you're falling in love. You feel the rush, the heartbeat, the obsession, the need. But what if that feeling wasn't divine? What if it wasn't connection, or destiny, or fate? What if it was a trap, an evolutionary illusion, crafted not to elevate you, but to enslave you? That's exactly what Arthur Schopenhauer believed. And he didn't whisper it. He declared it. Schopenhauer called love the grandest deception ever pulled by nature. He didn't see it as noble or sacred. He saw it as bait, designed to lure men into a cycle of reproduction, sacrifice, and suffering. Women, in his world, were not romantic partners. They were biological agents of a force he called the will to life, a blind, unthinking impulse that uses beauty, desire, and emotion to keep the species going, at your expense. To him, the man in love isn't empowered. He's compromised. He's no longer himself. He becomes obsessed with the illusion of the woman before him, her softness, her eyes, her smile, all while nature laughs from behind the curtain. Because what he thinks is love is really submission. What he thinks is purpose is just programming. This wasn't bitterness. It was Schopenhauer's brutal clarity. He believed that everything we dress up with poetry and romance is just nature using us. Love is not the beginning of freedom. It is the end of it. And by the time you realize that, it's too late. You've already signed the invisible contract. You've already handed over your peace. So if you came looking for hope, you won't find it here. Schopenhauer didn't write for lovers. He wrote for those trying to escape. And in his world, the greatest threat to your soul wasn't hatred. It was love, with a smile sharp enough to cut you open. To Schopenhauer, love wasn't sacred. It was sabotage. He looked at it not through the eyes of a poet, but through the cold lens of biology. And what he saw disturbed him. While the world praised love as the highest of human experiences, he saw it as the most elaborate trap ever set by nature. Not because it felt false, but because it felt too real, too consuming, too perfect. That intensity, he believed, wasn't a gift. It was a warning. Love overrides logic. It hijacks thought. A man in love becomes possessed by visions of future children, of lifelong happiness, of soulful union. But Schopenhauer would ask, who planted those visions? His answer? Nature did. Not for your benefit, but for its own. To him, the feelings we romanticize are simply evolutionary tactics, designed not to fulfill you, but to ensure you reproduce. Nature doesn't care about your joy. It cares about your function. Love, in this view, is not a union of souls. It's a biological manipulation. And the more deeply you feel it, the more deeply you're being used. That's the horror Schopenhauer saw. The idea that what we worship as transcendent may actually be the most effective form of enslavement, because no one questions love. They surrender to it. He saw the lover as a man drunk on a hallucination, believing he's found eternal meaning when, in fact, he's just another player in nature's blind, endless game. And the tragedy is that it feels like freedom. It feels like truth. But according to Schopenhauer, love is the mask nature wears while it tightens the noose. It smiles. It seduces. It promises forever. And it takes everything, while you thank it for doing so. Schopenhauer didn't believe women acted with cruelty. He believed they embodied it, though not by intention. They were, to him, nature's chosen instruments. Not individuals working against men, but vessels of a force deeper and darker than either sex could fully understand. He called that force the will to life, the blind, insatiable drive that compels all living things to reproduce, to survive, to keep spinning the wheel of existence no matter how much suffering it creates. And in that system, women weren't participants. They were mechanisms, refined by evolution to carry out the will's agenda with precision and subtlety. Their beauty, their emotional pull, their ability to entrance a man, none of it, in Schopenhauer's view, was accidental. It was nature using form to override reason. Women, he said, were by nature meant to serve the continuation of the species, not the elevation of the individual. That's what made them dangerous. Not their choices, but their design. A woman might believe she's loving you, but in Schopenhauer's eyes, she is being moved by something far more primal, far more indifferent. Something that doesn't care about your dreams, or peace, or freedom. It cares only that you stay long enough to be useful. And then, when your role is complete, it discards you. And she moves on, unaware she was ever the messenger of your undoing. He wasn't speaking to insult. He was speaking to expose, to show that the most destructive forces in life don't always wear fangs. They wear perfume. They touch you gently while feeding you to the machine of reproduction and regret. Women, in this philosophy, are not villains. They're vectors, beautiful, intuitive, and completely aligned with a will that never loved you. It only used you. In Schopenhauer's world, the moment a man falls in love is the moment he surrenders everything that once made him whole. He loses his clarity, his ambition dims, his independence withers, not because she asked for it, but because the feeling demanded it. Love, he believed, was not a shared flame. It was a consuming fire. And the man who steps into it doesn't realize he's being burned until there's nothing left. He saw love as the great hypnotizer. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It wraps itself around your thoughts until you can't remember what it felt like to think freely. You start imagining futures that aren't yours, sacrificing priorities that once defined you. You call it devotion, but Schopenhauer called it decay. Because the man in love stops being a man. He becomes a function, an extension of the will to life, chasing something he doesn't understand, sacrificing himself for an illusion he calls destiny. What's terrifying, Schopenhauer warned, is how willingly men comply, how eagerly they hand over their freedom in exchange for the fantasy of connection. They believe they're rising, when in truth, they're folding. It's not loyalty, it's entrapment. And the deeper the feeling, the more powerful the grip. This is why Schopenhauer viewed romantic love not as a gift, but as a form of madness, short-lived, destructive, and almost always regretted. The man who believes he's found meaning in a woman has, in Schopenhauer's view, simply found the perfect distraction. And by the time the spell wears off, he's already spent years serving someone else's purpose. He thought he was choosing her. But the truth is brutal. He was chosen by her. Or worse, by nature itself. And now, all that remains of him is what the illusion didn't consume. To Schopenhauer, female beauty was not art. It was strategy. A carefully engineered illusion crafted by nature to deceive, to entrap, and to control. He didn't marvel at beauty the way poets did. He dissected it. He saw it not as a symbol of grace, but as a biological weapon, sharp, silent, and terrifyingly effective. He argued that beauty exists for one reason, to override reason. A beautiful woman doesn't need to persuade. to prove, or to explain. Her presence alone disarms. Her smile becomes command. Her body becomes destiny. And the man, convinced he's witnessing something divine, never realizes he's being baited, not by her, but by nature itself. In Schopenhauer's view, beauty isn't accidental, it's functional. It exists to trap the male mind in a loop of obsession. It causes him to ignore red flags, betray his values, abandon his purpose, all because something in him believes that beauty is truth. But Schopenhauer's voice cuts through that illusion. It's not truth, it's utility. He believed beauty acts like a mirage. It offers the promise of completion, of peace, of eternal connection. But once the man steps forward, the illusion shifts. It was never about fulfillment. It was about reproduction. The will to life uses beauty to bait the trap. And by the time the man realizes it, he's already caught. In a relationship he doesn't understand, bound to a future he didn't choose. This is why Schopenhauer saw beauty not as something to be celebrated, but something to be feared. Because when it's working, you don't know it's working. It feels like love. It feels like meaning. But to him, it was just nature smiling while it tightens the rope, using her face, her form, her silence to lead you to your own undoing. In Schopenhauer's eyes, marriage was not the culmination of love. It was its final betrayal. A contract dressed in ritual, cloaked in vows, but built entirely to serve the will. The moment a man steps into it, he believes he's securing companionship, peace, maybe even happiness. But what he's really entering, Schopenhauer argued, is a lifelong sentence, not to love, but to obligation. He saw marriage as the machinery of reproduction, efficient, legal, and inescapable. Once the desire that lured the man in begins to fade, what remains is duty. He is no longer the lover. He is the provider, the protector, the trapped, and the woman. She too was not acting maliciously. She was fulfilling her role, as designed by nature and enforced by society. Schopenhauer believed that, in marriage, the romantic illusion collapses. The warmth that once drew the man in becomes routine. The beauty that once stirred his soul becomes background. And what once felt like ecstasy now feels like endurance. He no longer lives for himself. He lives to maintain the structure he willingly entered. But now that the spell is broken, the walls begin to show. To him, marriage was nature's way of ensuring that the illusion of love didn't fade before the purpose was fulfilled. Children, labor, continuation. The man, believing he chose this life out of passion, doesn't realize he was chosen by instinct, cornered by feelings he couldn't understand, and now shackled by promises he can't escape. There is no villain in this system. That's what makes it so cruel. No one forces the man into marriage. He walks there himself, smiling, unaware that what waits on the other side isn't a new chapter of love. It's the slow erosion of everything he once called his own. Schopenhauer believed that once the veil of love falls, what's left is not fulfillment, but a strange, hollow silence. The man who once stood drunk with desire now wakes up in a reality he no longer recognizes. The promises of love have faded. The passion is gone. And what remains is disillusion, quiet, creeping, and irreversible. He warned that love always decays, that the fever eventually breaks, and when it does, what once felt like destiny begins to feel like deception. The woman he idealized becomes ordinary. The sacrifices he made seem absurd. He doesn't feel betrayed by her. He feels betrayed by himself, by the version of him that once believed. This is the moment Schopenhauer considered most tragic, not the heartbreak, but the emptiness that follows. The realization that what once consumed him was never real. It was projection, a beautiful hallucination sustained by instinct and reinforced by culture. Now that it's gone, there is no enemy to fight, no crime to forgive, only time lost and a self that cannot be reclaimed. For many men, Schopenhauer believed, this leads to quiet resentment, not hatred, not rage, but a numb kind of grief, a sense that they gave everything for something that turned to dust. And yet, even in that pain, few dare to speak it. Society tells them to endure, to be grateful, to accept the slow death of passion as the natural rhythm of life. But Schopenhauer offered no such comfort. He called it what it was, the collapse of an illusion, the brutal echo of a truth most will never admit, that love, once it serves its purpose, discards its mask. And when it does, the man is left staring at a life he didn't choose, bound by feelings that once felt holy and now feel empty. For Schopenhauer, there was only one form of resistance against the machinery of love, desire, and biological submission: renunciation. Not bitterness, not rebellion, but the quiet, disciplined refusal to play the game. He believed the only true liberation came when a man looked love in the face, saw through its illusion, and walked away. Not with anger, but with clarity. The will to life, in Schopenhauer's philosophy, is not evil, but it is relentless. It pushes you to chase, to crave, to fall. And women, as agents of that will, are part of the trap, not by choice, but by nature's design. They awaken the longing that blinds you. They ignite the hope that enslaves you. And to escape them is not to hate them. It is to escape what they represent, the cycle of craving and suffering that never ends. He didn't call for war between the sexes. He called for transcendence. A man who refuses love is not loveless. He is free. He no longer seeks validation in another's arms. He no longer kneels before beauty. He no longer offers himself to be consumed in the fire of romantic illusion. He simply steps away, withdraws his energy, breaks the pattern. And in that withdrawal, something remarkable happens. The man no longer lives for others. He begins to live for truth, not for fleeting pleasure or domestic peace or emotional security, but for silence, solitude, and insight. The kind of insight that only comes when the noise of desire has finally gone quiet. This, for Schopenhauer, was the highest form of strength. To reject not just the woman, but the will itself. To become sovereign, still, unmoved, not broken by love, but untouched by it. Because the only man who wins the game of love is the one who refuses to play